Welcome to the Royal Ranger Podcast, where we are talking about all things Royal Rangers and building an effective discipleship ministry for boys in your church. I'm Karl Flight, the National Director for Royal Rangers USA, and my co-host is John Hicks, the National Programs and Curriculum Coordinator. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Let's jump into it. Hello, everyone, again, and welcome to the Ranger Podcast. We are excited today to speak to you about a topic that I think is critical, not only for Royal Rangers, but just ministry to boys. You know, as we are moving into customization with Rangers, you know, and Rangers can look at a lot of different ways because we fit or we adjust to fit to the local church. It's important that we remember the elements that are critical to being able to reach a boy. Because they're not just baked into a pre-prescribed program. Try to say that real fast. Pre-prescribed program. But there are some definite strategies. And so whether you're doing it in Royal Rangers or doing ministry to boys, these strategies are really important. So with me is John Hicks, our programs coordinator. And John, you want to talk about that any?
Yeah. So today we're talking about the 7 essentials of ministry to boys. So some time ago, when we kind of began thinking about, how do we provide resources and materials and thought leadership in the area of ministry to boys in a broader context beyond just Royal Rangers, we began to look at the different aspects of the Royal Ranger program and say, what are we doing? What are we teaching? What are those principles and practices that we have in Royal Rangers that actually apply beyond Royal Rangers? So obviously there's a lot of things we do in Rangers that are very program specific that really only relate to Royal Rangers.
That's right.
But many of the principles and practices that drive everything we do are really universal.
They are.
And so we began to realize that the core behind the way you do ministry to boys will apply in any setting. They apply within the Royal Ranger program setting, but they also can apply just as effectively if your church is doing some other form of ministry to boys or you choose to integrate your ministry to boys within your existing church programs. So that's really where these 7 essentials came from. Now, within the context of Rangers, we've been using the term the 7 methods for several years. And this is essentially the same thing as the 7 methods that we've been talking about for a long time. The main thing that we've done here is we kind of rearranged them a little bit and put them in a specific sequential order, because as we go through them today, you'll see how those 7 essentials really do flow one right into another. They kind of follow a logical process. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to try to lay out what are those 7 essentials, what are those 7 things that if you're going to do any form of ministry to boys, an effective ministry to boys, what are those 7 steps, those 7 components, those 7 building blocks? What are those 7 things that are essential for having an effective ministry to boys? And that's really what we're talking about today.
Absolutely. It'd be great for you if you're taking notes on this, just to write them out, and then every now and then go back and reassess what you do on your weekly program, whether it's an outpost or it's a small group or whatever, and say, hey, are these elements all there? They don't have to be there every week, but are they a regular part of what we're doing? Because they really are critical to ministering to boys.
Yep, absolutely.
So first one, John, let's talk about activities.
Yeah, so it really all begins with activities. And I know, in any ministry context, naturally we would think, well, the most important thing we do is discipleship. The most important thing we do is Bible study or prayer. Absolutely, that is the most important overall. But when it comes to ministering to boys, if you begin with Bible study, discipleship, prayer, in many cases, you won't connect with a boy because you really have to build that foundation. You got to build that relationship before you ever get to that point. So we'll get to the discipleship point here in a minute. But when you're talking about effective ministry to boys, it really begins with activities because activities are the things that bring men and boys together.
Right.
Boys aren't going to participate unless it's fun. Now, we're not talking about the church kid who mom and dad says you're going whether you like it or not because it's church day and we're going to church and you're going to whatever that group is over there. Those boys are important too. Absolutely. We want to minister to them. But if you really want an effective ministry to boys, it's got to be something that boys come to because they want to be there.
It appeals to them, absolutely.
Yes, something that kid who's out riding his bike, riding his skateboard in the afternoon, he's going to stop what he's doing and come to your group because this is fun.
That's right.
If a kid comes because he wants to be there, that's a good sign. And that the way you're going to get that kid there is not through prayer and Bible study, although we know that is absolutely important. The thing that's going to get that kid there is if it's a fun activity. So when you're talking about activities, it's important that we have a variety of activities. We don't just do one type of thing because not every boy is interested in the same thing. And that's why, like in Rangers, we use a term called our core competencies, which are the 5 different categories of activities that we do with boys. We do outdoor activities.
Which is what we're mostly known for.
Yep, that's most commonly. That's what Rangers historically has done. And a lot of Ranger guys still do that and promote that a lot. And there's nothing wrong with that. We still do a lot of activities.
Absolutely.
We still go camping. We still go hiking.
Think it's the best way for us to connect with a boy. We've seen that over and over and over again.
Well, and I even read I think I read an article recently where I think they said that since COVID, the number of people that are out camping and doing outdoor activities has just really exploded.
It has.
And something like almost a third of all Americans spent some time in some camping-related activity last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how many people, like 80 million Americans.
We were all stuck inside and we realized how much we like being outdoors.
Yeah, exactly. So it's outdoor activities are still very popular.
Yeah.
But we also realize not every boy likes to go outdoors and get
right.
sweaty and dirty and play in the woods. So we also do sporting activities.
Yep.
We also do science and technology things. Yes. We do trade skills like carpentry and plumbing and auto mechanics. A lot of boys just like to build things and get their fingers dirty and get out and make something. And they'd much rather run a table saw and build a doghouse than they would set up a tent and sleep in the woods. And that's fine. And then we also do arts and culture. That's the 5th category. So outdoor activities, sports, science and technology, trade skills, and arts and culture are kind of the 5 categories that we use, that we say, if you're going to do activities with your boys, you want to have a diversity of activities and try to provide something for every boy. So that's where
that goes into our vision statement, which is influencing more boys than ever, more effectively than ever.
Yeah.
And so, the wider our net, the more boys we're going to draw in, i.e. the more boys we're going to mentor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that really is the bottom line. So, and as you were saying, activities, we do the activities because it's fun. It draws the boys. But remember, we always say in Rangers, fun with a purpose. Mm-hmm. And so activities also is how a boy learns. The last thing you want to do is put them in the table or put them in rows and chairs facing the front and you stand up there and just talk to them. That's probably the most ineffective way to teach a boy. So activities really does become critical in the sense that it draws them, it gives them the fun, but it also is critical for us achieving our purpose, and that's mentoring them into the next generation of Christ-like men.
Yep.
That's good.
And then those activities, the reason why the activities are so important is not only do they draw boys into your group, but they also become the basis for the next point, and that is relationships.
Point number 2, that's right.
Those activities provide the avenue through which relationships are built. We know men and boys build relationships side by side. I think David Morrow originally made that statement in his book, Why Men Hate Going to Church, that women are better at forming relationships face-to-face. They interact better, they talk face-to-face better. Men like to go out and do stuff together. They like to go play golf. They like to go play tennis. They want to go, work on the garage or work on the car or do something. So, and the same way with boys. Boys like to go out and do things together, and that's how they form relationships. So that's why the activities are important, because without the activities, you don't form the relationships. And if you don't form the relationships, none of the other things work.
That is exactly right. So, and that's also important whether you're a boy or whether you're a man.
Yep.
And so one of the critical pieces with Royal Rangers, and we can't miss this. Sometimes I think we do kind of miss this. It's the relationship that it builds for the men in the church too. Mm-hmm. So, and that's critically important because you need men involved, because a boy learns how to be a man in the company of men. Yeah. And so it's just this big circle that boys need relationship with each other. They need that friendship, that community, but they also need it with men. Men need it with men. And sometimes we're not so, like John said just a moment ago, we're not so good at doing that. And so in Royal Rangers, we build this community. I'm just amazed when I travel, and you hear me say this often, but when I travel, if I'm wearing Ranger gear or something like that, guys are drawn to that because they remember that. And for many of them, they were in Rangers as a boy or whatever. And I may not have ever met that man before, but there's that community, there's that natural relationship. Yeah. That, and on an adult level, it gives me the right to speak in their lives. Like, hey, are you still going to church? Are you still, I wouldn't say that to a man just off the street I met, but because he was in Rangers, we can, and he's accepting of it. Mm-hmm. And so for a boy, just think as you're building those relationships, it gives them a place to belong.
Yeah, and that's the third point that we're talking about is that identity, that group identity.
Yes.
Because when you do those activities, you build those relationships, then you've provided that community, that place where boy feels like I belong here.
Yes.
This is my place. You know, everybody, every boy, every man, every person wants to have a place where they feel like I belong here. I'm wanted here. I'm known here. Yeah. I'm noticed here. These people know me and they still love me.
Yes.
That's very important for a boy to know that we know you. We know all the good, bad, and ugly about you. But we still love you, and we still want you to be here every week, and we still value you, and we're going to still help you grow into being the godly man that you need to be. And we've said it many times, but a boy learns what Christ-like manhood looks like when he sees it modeled in the lives of men that he knows and respects.
That's right.
So that's why it's so important that a boy be surrounded by a community of men to where he sees a variety of men in a variety of settings, and yet all of them can still be godly men. So he doesn't get the idea that you've got to be big and tall and muscular, or you've got to be very well educated, or you've got to be really wealthy, or you've got to be a great farmer, or whatever it is. Any of those men can be great godly men, or any of those men can be horrible men in their moral character. But boys need to see a community of men where a variety of skills and abilities are represented, and yet they can all still be godly men. And that's why it's so important. Because a boy's always going to see somebody in that community that he can say, okay, that's the guy I can be like. Mm-hmm. I may not be able to be like man over there or that man over there, but I can be like this guy, because this guy is someone that I can see myself as. That's very important. That's part of that community. It's part of that identity that a boy needs.
Yeah, we always say more is caught than taught.
Yeah.
And for a boy, that is so true. You watch a boy, and when his dad's out there mowing the lawn, he's got his little plastic mower, and he's walking right along behind him. And how many times you look at a guy and you just say, you're a spitting image of your dad, because he walks like his dad. He has the same mannerisms. It's not something we study to do. We caught it. Yeah. And we model ourselves after those people that are significant in our lives. Identity is, we see the value of identity. Just look when it's football season. It amazes me. Our football revenue in the NFL has just continued to increase. I remember in 22 with the Chiefs and as we were making that Super Bowl run and all. And the NFL at that point had hit over $18 billion. And in this last season, we're over 23 billion. We like to identify in a group. Yeah. And so whether it's a church group or whether it's an activity or a sports team or whatever. Mm-hmm. So identity is critical. Yeah. And we have to make sure we look at that.
Yeah, and that's important because men like to identify with winners.
Yes,
they want
big time.
So like if
I want to be on the losing
team. You may be like here in Missouri, everyone in Missouri around football season, everybody wears a Chiefs jersey. Yeah. Because Kansas City Chiefs have, they've won the Super Bowl, 16,000 times in a row. I don't know.
No. We're hoping that.
Yeah. So, if you live in Missouri, you pretty much have to be a Chiefs fan or else bad things could happen to you. I don't know. But imagine what would happen if suddenly the Chiefs became this horrible, terrible team that lost every game of the season and okay, you'd see a lot of Chiefs jersey in the yard sale.
I will refrain from mentioning any NFL teams right now that may fit that model. Yeah. Because some of you may be part of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You may feel the pain of that. My local team is anyway. But the point is, men want to identify with a winning organization, a winning group, so and that's why with boys, when we connect with them to the church, we are a winning organization. When we can tell boys we are doing something that's going to change the world. We're doing something that's going to change our community. We've got a community of men in our church and our community that's going to help the people around us. We're helping hurting people. We're serving people. We're going to win people to Christ. We're going to win the world for Christ. That's a winning team that any boy should take pride in being a part of.
Yeah. So in Rangers, we have that identity. That's the Royal Ranger logo, and that's recognized. It's been around for a long, long time. It's a strong logo, and that's critical. If you're doing boys ministry and you don't, you're not ascribing to the Royal Ranger ministry, create an identity for your group. Give them a fun name, give them a cool name, something that a boy will be, proud to wear on his shirt, so that he can feel like he's part of something. Yeah. So so far we've talked about activities, how critically important those are. That is a boy's way of, if it's fun, they're going to come back. It's a way for they learn an activity, shoulder to shoulder. quarter. We talked about relationships, how important that is for boys to have those relationships both with other boys, with men, and for men to have relationships with men. We talked about identity. The fourth one, now we're starting to get to the meat of everything, which is discipleship.
Absolutely. Yeah, and notice, I mean, this is the fourth one in the process, and notice that this is not the first one. And I think that's where sometimes churches or church leaders kind of make the mistake when they're trying to minister to boys. They want to start with discipleship. They want to, okay, we're going to start a boys group and we're going to have a Bible study over here on Tuesday mornings or Sunday afternoons or whatever. And they want boys to come. And they struggle to get kids to come to it because they've not done the previous three. They've not started with activities. They've not built relationships. They've not established an identity. So boys don't really have a driving reason for being there. But if you've done those other three things, if you've got activities, if you've built identity, you've built relationships, now when it comes time to sit down with those boys and say, okay, now let's open the Word. Let's talk about men in the Bible. Let's talk about what David faced. Let's talk about what Joseph faced. Let's talk about Joshua. What can we learn from the lives of these men? And what does that mean to us today? And how is it going to shape our character as men? How can we behave in ways in our context today, in our culture, that still reflect the same principles of godliness that those men represented, but we can live it out in our culture today, in our community. And now those boys are going to be much more open to that conversation because they know you. Because you've already established that you know them and they love you.
That's right.
So you've earned the right to speak into their heart in a way that you would not have done if you had not done those activities and other things in advance.
That's exactly right. I think that's a critical component because, there's a lot of groups out there that do those first three. But if you're not including number four, and that's why, again, we say fun with a purpose. They're coming together because they're having fun. Let's face it, that's what brings a boy together. He's there to have a good time. But in the midst of that, we're going to be very intentional in what we do to disciple a boy. Even like John said, when he says, now we're getting to that, we don't start with that. It's not to lessen the importance of discipleship. Absolutely not. The exact opposite. We start with it because we hook them, we bring them in, we give them a good place to belong in a place. A boy needs those relationships. 3 out of 4 boys, we know 71% actually in our nation grew up without a significant male role model. So we create that, we give that. But then when you bring them together, you better have something you're doing with them more than just camping, more than just activity, because then that's just a social boys club. And there's quite a few of those out there. I mean, you can be part of that. But our goal is to mentor the next generation of Christ-like men. And that's where this piece comes in. Yeah. And so we have to be intentional in doing that.
Yeah. And this is where the real eternal impact comes in. I mean, you can do fun activities. You can build relationships. You can have a group identity in your local club, men's group somewhere in your local community. But if you're not doing things that transform the life of a boy and help him to see the path that he was created for, to help him to see that God created him for a purpose, that God empowers him with his Spirit to do wonderful and amazing things. That's what every boy needs to hear. Every boy needs to know, I was created for a purpose. I'm empowered by God to fulfill that purpose, and the Spirit is going to walk with me every day to fulfill that. And I can make a difference in my world. I can change my world for Christ. Every boy needs to know that, and that's part of that discipleship process. And you've got to be consistent, and you've got to stick with it long term. And that's one of the benefits that we've seen in the Ranger program, and I'm sure it can be the same way in other ministry groups to boys as well, is just the longevity that many leaders through the years in Rangers have put decades and decades of service into ministry. And I mean, it's encouraging to me now that I'll go to district events or national events, and I'll run into young men that were in my group as a boy years ago, and now they're, youth pastors and senior pastors, and it's just like, wow, you've grown up, kid. I remember when you were just a little guy, and but it's so encouraging when you see that longevity and you're able to see what God's been able to do in their life, even long after they left my group. Right. God still is doing wonderful and amazing things in them.
And even if they're not youth pastors or pastors, they're godly dads. Yeah. They're raising their family as in the way of the Lord, and they're engaged in church, and they're engaged in raising their children, the next generation. That's powerful. And that's so critical. And so there again, we have a great process. We have great curriculum that help you to move that in that way through track club, through our discipleship process. And even if you're not using Royal Rangers as your ministry tool, if you're listening to this and you're just saying, hey, I want to know more on how to be effective, use the curriculum. You can take that curriculum, and it does. Our discipleship curriculum isn't specifically towards Royal Rangers. It's to raise up a Christ-like man.
Right.
And you can use that curriculum to engage it because, boy, please don't get caught up in that experience of just having a fun program, but it doesn't have the purpose.
Yeah, and there are other resources you can use as well. I mean,
Yeah,
Bible
there
Engagement
is.
Project
Bible,
is an
that's
excellent,
a great one.
it's
Yes,
an excellent platform, excellent resources. Those are always that's available to you. The Radiant Life curriculum. I mean,
It's good.
You know, we
Yes,
think of it
really
as
good.
the old Sunday school curriculum, but you know, there is nothing old-fashioned about the Word of God and the Scripture that is taught in Radiant Life.
And with Radiant Life, they're going through a rewrite right now, and the new stuff is incredible. So, absolutely. You want to get engaged in that.
So, and that's it's all age appropriate. They've got it broken down in different groups. So there's a lot of good resources that are out there that could be used for ministering to your boys that you can use within the context of Royal Rangers or not, or if you want to do another type of ministry to boys group.
Yep.
So,
So another part that's unique, we got to keep rolling on this one. We could talk on these all for probably don't. We probably ought to do 7 podcasts, one on each one of them.
Maybe so.
But so after discipleship, the 5th one that we look at that is critical in the Ranger ministry is that of service.
Yep.
We teach our boys how to be ministers, and I don't mean preachers, but how to serve.
Yeah.
How to be able to help people in that way. You know, this Gen Z generation right now, they have a strong drive towards service, to cause, to have a cause and to do different things like that, make an impact on their world. And I love that. I love seeing how that is a driving force. And there's a compassion that's inside of them.
Yeah.
And that's what we teach in service. So
Yeah, and service is really the next logical step beyond discipleship, in that discipleship is where a boy learns how to be a godly man, but service is where he applies it. That's right. Because there's always going to be a limit to a boy's spiritual growth if he never learns to serve outside of his church or outside of his group. I mean, there's nothing wrong with serving your group and helping your group, but that's always kind of self-serving. You know, it's like, well, I'm doing this because it helps our group. There's nothing wrong with serving
that way, yes.
your group or your church. There's nothing wrong with that. But you've got to be able to move beyond that and say, I'm willing to give, I'm willing to serve, I'm going to help somebody else, even if I get absolutely no benefit for it.
That's right.
Nobody's paying me, nobody's giving me anything for it, there's no obligation here. But when a boy gets to that point to where he sees his life as being more than just, I'm growing into being a godly man, but that I'm here to serve and I'm here to give back, that's when his spiritual growth goes to the next level.
We move out of the secular into the spiritual,
Yeah.
because that's the heart of Christ.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's, he came and gave his life for others.
Yeah.
He was willing to put himself down.
Yeah.
And so we want to teach him that way. And we have some great avenues for those of you in Royal Rangers to do that. Pathfinders is an incredible way. I know you're getting ready to take a group of boys to the Outer Banks, aren't you?
Yeah.
And so, you're going out there. I mean, they're going to have fun. They're going to have a great time. This is a great example of what we're talking about.
Yeah, because if it wasn't fun, they wouldn't want to go.
That's exactly
honest,
right. But while you're there, you're going to be doing service projects. You're going to be doing all kinds of things, and they're going to learn how to give in doing that.
Yes.
What an awesome opportunity! And again, just a great way to connect up with this generation, see their lives making a difference that's bigger than themselves or their own group. Get them looking at their Pathfinders is another. Well, that is a Pathfinder group, but take them out on service projects. I know this next summer here we've got, or this summer I should say, we've got a couple of different Pathfinder groups that are going to be doing some local things, which we call them bronze trips. We'll talk about Pathfinders another time, but it is a service project and a way for us to do that.
Yeah, and all the leadership merits encourage the group to do some type of service project.
Even if it's in another ministry in the church.
Yeah.
Help out in kids' church or, find ways that you can serve and put your feet to your faith.
Yeah.
So is a way that we say that. So that's a critical component.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then from service, we move into, I think, a really important part, which is leadership. We're wanting to develop leaders. You're either
Yeah.
a leader or a follower, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to develop leaders in our young men and help them move into that. Help them know how to lead a group, engage as part of a team. We have a ranger. He's a leader. He's been a leader forever. Wes Kilcrease. Wes, shout out to you, Wes, if you're listening. Wes has been in Royal Rangers, I think, since almost nearly the beginning.
Yeah, I think Wes was Abraham Lincoln's outpost leader. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I might be mistaken.
We
on
love
that,
you,
but-
Wes. We're not, but you know what? Wes says something that I think is critical, and he says, "Never do something a boy can do."
Yeah.
And he models that. I mean, when they go out on camp outs or whatever. Wes, man, his boys, he's taught them how to do things, and then he sits back and he lets them do it.
Yeah.
But what's he doing? He's teaching them leadership, and now that leadership model is baked into his group. So as new boys are coming in, the boys are teaching the new boys.
Yeah.
Leadership,
Yeah.
and so but that's major. We need to help them, work with them on personal development. That's part of it. A boy needs confidence, doesn't he?
Yep.
And in leadership, that's what we're teaching. We're teaching confidence. We're teaching them how to lead. We're teaching them how to be able to demonstrate who they are and what they are.
Yeah.
Those are important components.
Yeah, one of the key things about developing leadership in boys is to make sure to help a boy grow in leadership when he's ready, to not push him too fast or to prevent him from growing as fast as he needs to. So it's not the idea, we're not promoting just the principle of developing leadership in general, but you've got to understand the boy himself to understand when he's ready and when he's ready to move to the next level. And again, that all goes back to relationship, because if you don't have the relationship with a boy, if you don't really understand him and what he's going through and what his background is and what his skills and interests are, then you could make the mistake of putting a boy in a leadership role when he's not ready, and then he has a bad experience, he gets burned, and then he never wants to do it again.
That's right.
And you could actually do more damage to a kid and his leadership development if you put him in leadership roles before he's ready. So that's why it all flows back to relationship. You've got to understand your boys, and you got to take them down that path at the appropriate time and at the appropriate speed.
And when you look at our process, you'll see that that's happening from activities where you're developing relationships and you're creating an identity both for your group and for that young man as himself. They're moving into discipleship. So they're learning activities. They're learning how to do things, which develops confidence in themselves. From there, they're learning who they are. They're developing. And you can see there's a natural progression that step by step by step, they move towards that. So yeah, you're not just throwing them into that, but we're bringing them along a pathway. And as a boy, none of us want to be involved in something we're not confident in.
Right.
If you ask me to, hey, do a class on diesel mechanics, and all that, I'd be a fish out of water. I wouldn't know the first thing.
Yeah.
It uses diesel fuel. I mean, that's about the extent, and it's loud. but you know what? If you've developed those areas of confidence in them, then a boy is a lot more willing to engage in that. And so our process helps them move along that pathway, if you will, towards that, which then eventually does bring them up. And you're right. Not every boy is going to be a leader of men or a leader, but we're going to be leaders of our families. Mm-hmm. We're going to be leader. We have to have a confidence in our own life so that we can stand up and talk about what we need to talk, who we are and what we are. And so those are all critical components in a boy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that then leads into the last segment, and
which
that
is number
is
7,
achievement.
Yeah. That's
Number
right.
7 is achievement.
That's right.
So achievement is where you provide milestones and passageways and processes that provide the boy with feedback on his growth and progress. With all of us, we want to achieve, we want to learn, we want to grow, but you kind of need some indicators to know when have I learned something, when have I accomplished this. When someone goes to school, they complete the course and they get a grade at the end of the course. Whether it be in college or high school or any course, you get some kind of grade report. You get some type of graduation certificate that says you've completed the requirements for this course. You take a course at work and they're going to give you some type of certificate or some type of something that says you've completed this, you've done this. Well, in the same way, boys need some type of milestone that says, yep, you've passed this. Yes, you've got this done. Yes, you've accomplished something. It's not about the milestones. It's not about the awards or the indicators. That's not the goal. The goal is the learning process. But yet, the other things are still valuable because they provide you with an indicator that I've made progress.
And a boy loves that.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, we all want to know where the 10-yard line is.
Yeah.
Because we want to know what we have to for the next first down. And we're driven by that. And I mean, our gaming systems, any game you play, there's levels, there's indicators, and you strive to reach that level so you can go to the next one and all that. That's wired into us as young men, as men. We like to have that. And so as you said, you said that exactly right. The goal isn't necessarily that accomplishment, but yet it's a critical component. And so having a process to give them that achievement, but then also to recognize that achievement, because that encourages them to what? Continue on.
Yeah.
I want to get to the next level. And of course, the more they stay engaged, that keeps them coming back, just like a gamer. I'm going to stay engaged because I want to get to the next level. And they do that to keep you engaged in their games. We do it because we want to keep them engaged in the process of becoming Christ-like men.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to relationship because every boy is different. There are some boys that are very much driven by the awards and the badges and the pins, and they want to earn every award in the book, and they're going to work until they get every patch and pin on their vest or uniform that they possibly can. And then there's other boys that really don't care much about that at all.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's fine for a boy to be either way. But I, as a leader, we as leaders, we have to know our boys well enough to know what are those things that are going to drive these boys. Because our ultimate goal is for every boy in the room to grow into being that godly man that God created him to be. The goal is not to give him an award to put on his shirt. There's nothing wrong with the awards to go on the shirt. Nothing at all. If that's something that helps that boy grow into be a godly man, absolutely, let's do it.
That's
but
right.
The thing we have to be careful about as leaders is that we really have to learn to balance it, because we don't want to put so much focus on the awards that boys get the impression that all that really matters around here is awards.
That's right.
I'm just working towards getting an award, because then for the boy that doesn't care about awards, he's just going to disconnect. He's going to drop out. I don't belong here anymore because all these guys work on is just awards all the time. So we have to focus on primarily, make it clear in the outpost, our primary focus is on helping every boy grow into being a godly man. And the awards are just a symbol of that. They're not the goal, they're a symbol. So it's just like there's a quote in the leader manual from John Ruskin that says, the greatest reward for a man's toil is not what he gets for it, but what he becomes by it.
That's huge.
And that's really crucial. That's our goal, is we want to see what our boys are going to become as a product of the process that we're taking them through, not what are they going to receive as a result of the process.
That's right. So that's, and I know we need to wrap this up because we're coming to, this has been a little longer one, but great elements. And again, we just encourage you as you look at these methods, these pieces that we use in our ministry, make sure that all of them are somehow engaged and somehow a part of what you are doing in your local outpost, because every piece is critical to the development of a boy.
Yep.
You don't want to, and we all have areas that we're very passionate about, and so it's easy for us to get caught and just be really heavy in that one area. But balance it out. You're going to have a balanced young man, and you're going to have a balanced ministry, a healthy ministry. And of course, we know healthy ministries grow. Yeah. And so that's where we want to go. If you want some more information on that, you can go to our website, Royal Rangers at royalrangers.com. That's our national website, and I got that right, didn't I?
Yep.
And so, and you can look for the 7 methods, or Google that, or do that, and put that in the search engine. There's different articles that we've written on that, and of course, in your Ranger Leader Manual, you'll find information on that as well. And as always, we're available. If you have questions, just email us at rangers at ag.org, and you can reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening to us. This has been another episode of our Royal Ranger podcast, as we've talked about the 7 essential methods, or
7 essentials of ministry to boys.
Essentials, that's it. So again, thank you guys. God bless you. And again, as always, thank you Thank you guys for what you do as you're reaching out and ministering to those boys. You're making a difference in the next generation of Christ-like men. You're the front line, and we very, very much appreciate you. God bless you. Have a great day.